Discover the amazing secrets to transform your mind overnight with 5 hidden techniques revealed. Sarah peered at the outdated chalkboard in front of her, where the numbers and equations faded like her dreams. An echo of laughter punctuated the air, and she winced at the sound. Each giggle was a reminder of the TikTok stars and YouTube influencers who captured her students' attention. They were magnetic. She felt like a ghost drifting in her own classroom. Why couldn't they feel her passion for physics and biology? An unease simmered in her chest, a constant reminder of her father's absence, a man whose brilliance was eclipsed by his unresolved past. Her classroom felt like a trap, cloaked in self-doubt. Each day, she stood in front of her students, fighting against the tide of their distracted minds. They'd rather watch lip-syncing videos than explore the wonders of the universe. She imagined their eyes glazing over while she brought out experiment after experiment. Was it all futile? Would she ever make a difference? The question haunted her like a chilling winter wind, never giving way to warmth. As she packed up her father's belongings in her childhood home, nostalgia clung to the air like dust. It was in the attic she stumbled upon the box, a collection of letters and journals. Each brittle page revealed the extraordinary mind of a man wrestling with the expectations of a town uninterested in anything beyond its horizon. 5 transformative techniques, he wrote, to unlock one's true potential overnight. What if there was still a flicker of ambition left in her? Each technique laid out for her could be her lifeline, yet the fear of failure loomed just as large. But as excitement began to swell within her, it was met with a pang of skepticism. What can one hopeful dreamer like you do? Hissed Lacey, a colleague with a golden touch for teaching. The rivalry was palpable, her confidence battling against Lacey's charisma. Would attempting to implement her father's methods only lead to further humiliation? Would it be worth exposing herself to more doubts in a place that already felt like a prison? The people she wished would support her seemed to snarl at her attempts, each derisive look a blow to her frail heart. The upcoming educational showcase became a storm raging inside her, a pressure cooker of expectations and fears. Would her students rally behind her, or would they be swayed by Lacey's captivating presence? The thought paralyzed her. Each passing day brought butterflies in her stomach that transformed into leaden weights pressing upon her chest. She was torn between showing the world who she was and protecting the fragile perception her peers held of her. Fear knotted her throat. What if this meant risking familial disgrace, becoming a failure like her father, a legacy faded into obscurity? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The clock ticked down as the showcase loomed, each second intensifying her dread. But just as she prepared for what could be a defining moment, doubt emerged like a shadow, whispering that her father's techniques might be a curse instead of a blessing. What if she faltered? What if she lost everything, including the very essence of who she was? Sarah stood on the brink, caught between the urgency to prove her worth and the haunting reminder of how she had always faded into the background. The void within her expanded, and with every thud of her heart, the stakes rose. Would she step into the spotlight, or retreat back to her shadows? As the night crept in, Sarah found herself sitting on the edge of her bed, a single bulb flickering above her, casting shadows that danced eerily across the walls. Her father's journal lay open before her, and she traced her fingers along the faded ink, feeling an odd connection to the man whose expectations loomed large over her. She couldn't shake the feeling that these 5 techniques were more than simple philosophy. Perhaps they were keys to unlock not just her potential but the essence of who she was meant to be. The first technique, embrace your fear, struck her fiercely. Here was a concept almost foreign to her, the idea that she should welcome the very doubt that paralyzed her. As she read the words, they felt like a challenge. Perhaps it was time to confront Lacey head-on. Could she muster the courage to not only glide past her rival but also create an experience her students would remember? This realization surged through her like a shot of adrenaline. If fear had been her prison, then perhaps embracing it would be her escape. The next day in class, Sarah stood before her students, a new fire ignited within her. She decided not to hide behind her structured lesson plans. After a brief introduction, she posed a question: "What is something you're afraid of?" A few hands shot up, and she listened intently, a spark of inspiration igniting in her chest. Fear had a way of connecting them all, and that was the bridge she needed. Taking a deep breath, she launched into an experiment that intertwined their fears with the wonders of physics, launching a model rocket, symbolizing overcoming obstacles. The students watched curiously, slowly engaging as they began to understand how science applied to real life and, more importantly, to their personal narratives. Shrill laughter filled the room as they witnessed the ignition, and for the first time, Sarah felt the elements of gravity and elevation working in tandem with their newfound enthusiasm. The act of discovering became contagious, knitting together a bond that shielded her from the lurking specter of Lacey's critique. However, in the depths of her triumph, a weight still pressed on her shoulders. The showcase was approaching, and she needed to refine her strategy. More than just an experiment, she had to embody the essence of these techniques herself, and that required facing numerous vulnerabilities. The question of whether she was genuinely unlocking her potential or simply putting on a facade began to gnaw at her. In the days leading up to the showcase, Sarah dedicated herself to mastering the remaining techniques. Visualized success soured her stomach. Could she truly envision herself in the limelight? Each visualization felt like a treacherous plunge into the unknown. She found herself spiraling into those feelings of inadequacy that had haunted her for so long. But with every moment of despair came a flicker of resolve. What if she began her visualization not with the fear of failure but with a comforting sense of self? The showcase day dawned bright and promising. Sarah's heart raced. The stakes had never felt higher. It was time to strip away the layers she had hidden behind for far too long. Would her students rise up, inspired by her authenticity? Would Lacey's charm falter in the face of genuine passion? As she stepped onto the stage, a sudden wave of realization swept over her. This was not just about showcasing her lesson but presenting who she was. The audience was waiting, doubt and excitement rattled her in a captivating dance. The moment had come. With the weight of several eyes gazing upon her, she took one last deep breath. But just as she opened her mouth to speak, she spotted Lacey at the back of the room, arms folded with a smug smile. For a brief moment, the world shrank to just the two of them. This rivalry was more than mere competition, it was a confrontation with everything she had tried to repress. Sarah steadied herself, determination surging anew. She would confront not only Lacey but all the fears that had kept her shackled for years. And just as she prepared to unleash her thoughts, a new question arose. What would it mean to step into the light, not just for herself, but for the legacy she would create? In that moment, clarity struck. But as she began to speak, a sudden crash took the room by surprise, momentarily distracting her focus. What now? The stage was set for an unforeseen event to unfold, testing not just her plans but her very resolve. Would she stand firm or falter in front of everyone? The sound of the crash reverberated through the room, a startling intruder in Sarah's moment of clarity. A cart laden with props had toppled over, spilling brightly colored supplies onto the floor. The students gasped collectively, eyes wide with shock. For a split second, Sarah felt time twist like rubber. Her heart raced, not just from the sudden noise but from the challenge before her. This was chaos unmediated, and she'd need to steady the ship or watch her carefully constructed confidence dissolve. She glanced back at Lacey, whose expression had shifted from smug satisfaction to palpable curiosity. This was it. The moment felt monumental, a public stage set for private battles. Those split seconds of hesitation transformed into decision-making fuel, molten determination forging itself into action. Remaining rooted, Sarah took a slow breath, letting the warmth of the spotlight wash over her like an embrace. Instead of panicking, she exhaled deeply, releasing any tether to fear. "All right, everyone," she said, projecting her voice confidently. "Looks like we've just experienced a real-life lesson on the laws of motion. Who is up for a challenge?" She pointed toward the scattered supplies, recalling the lessons on friction and force. The energy in the room shifted, her students captivated by her enthusiasm and the prospect of participating. This unplanned moment could become a pivotal lesson in resilience, urging them to see the beauty in imperfection. Let us see how we can work together to fix this mess. What do we think is the best way to get it all back on the cart, and what principles can we apply? Gradually, hands shot up, and animated discussions blossomed. Sarah felt the rhythm of the classroom transform, her students engaged not just by her words, but by the challenge of collaboration. Their suggestions streamed forth, some rational, others wild, but each idea was a thread weaving them closer as a group. As the chaos turned into teamwork, a realization dawned on Sarah. This accidental moment was a reflection of her own growth, her ability to turn fear and distraction into clarity and focus. She had learned to embrace not just her fears, but the unexpected. It illuminated the profound truth that education wasn't solely about procedural methodologies but about emotional resilience and connection. Yet, beneath that exhilarating surface lay another layer of self-examination. Was she really prepared to endure the scrutiny that came with her newfound vulnerability? Lacey's eyes lingered in the back of her mind like an uninvited echo, constantly beckoning her to falter. The tension was almost unbearable, the interplay between her emerging confidence and the specter of self-doubt creating a tug-of-war in her mind. Once the room had settled into a productive buzz, Sarah deftly nudged the dialogue into further depths. Let us connect what's happening here to what we learn in our studies. How can we relate these moments of challenge to our personal journeys? What laws apply not just in science, but in our own lives? Her voice steady, she felt the shift again, this time on a more personal level. The engagement deepened, sparking discussions about overcoming failures, to the surprise of her students. They articulated their fears and aspirations, their worries about public perception gradually waning under the warmth of shared experience. The irony was tangible, her challenge had manifested not just through her lesson plan but through her willingness to be real with them. As the class neared its conclusion, a new resolve pulsed through Sarah. She realized her journey extended beyond just battling Lacey. It was about shaping her legacy through authentic connections. However, the uncertainty lingered. Would this be enough to counteract Lacey's polished composure in future encounters? Just as Sarah dismissed the class, Lacey approached her, an unreadable expression on her face. This was the confrontation she hadn't anticipated, a moment that could define the trajectory of her newfound confidence. "Nice recovery," Lacey said coolly, her playful tone a strange mix of challenge and respect. An internal war raged within Sarah. Should she deflect the compliment to maintain her distance or embrace the unexpected turn this rivalry had taken? The answer lingered in the air, weightier than she anticipated. Would stepping forward show strength or vulnerability? As a new layer of complexity began to unfold, she pondered her choice, the consequences of engagement hanging heavily over her. This was a decisive juncture, one that held the potential to redefine everything she had come to learn about fear, connection, and her unfolding story. "Why, thank you, Lacey. But it's not over yet," she replied, a smile forming on her lips laden with newfound determination. The campus hum became distant as Sarah felt the magnitude of her development surge, igniting questions for tomorrow. Was she ready to challenge Lacey not only as a rival but as a collaborator? Would the lessons learned lead to a confrontation that would reveal deeper truths about each other and herself? The echo of Lacey's words hung in the air, lingering like smoke after a fire, as Sarah felt the weight of her response settle across her shoulders. The challenge wasn't just professional, it had morphed into a more personal sphere, poking at her insecurities and desires. The next day would bring more than just a lesson plan, it would bring an opportunity to explore a partnership she hadn't considered. That evening, Sarah's mind was abuzz as she prepared for the next day's class. She reviewed her strategies, determined to delve deeper, leveraging her newfound confidence. However, looming in her thoughts was Lacey, a multifaceted rival whose polished exterior had perhaps shielded deeper vulnerabilities. As Sarah flipped the pages of her lesson plan, a question flickered through her mind: what if engaging with Lacey could yield even greater lessons? She knew the risks of collaboration, especially with someone who had often overshadowed her. Yet, that risk also harbored potential of learning, of growth, of mutual respect. The stakes felt higher now, blurring the line between personal development and professional aspiration. Morning arrived, casting soft light through her classroom windows, illuminating the scattered materials left from their previous class. She took a moment, inhaling deeply, centering herself. Today, she would seek clarity amid the complexity, using their past interaction as a foundation to structure a novel discussion, one that included Lacey but challenged the conventional hierarchy they had previously maintained. As her students filed in, the vibrant energy from the previous session still buzzing among them, she approached the class with a reinvigorated mindset. "Good morning, everyone. We're diving into a collaborative project today," she announced, gauging the responses of her students' curiosity, confusion, excitement. Then she continued, "Yesterday we turned chaos into teamwork. But let us push further. What if I invited a guest to assist us?" The students exchanged glances, intrigued. "Lacey will be joining us today," she added, feeling a sense of empowerment with her decision, one that reflected her evolution. Lacey entered with her usual poise, but the subtle arch of her brow suggested she was wary of Sarah's intentions. "You didn't tell me we'd be performing yet another public act, Sarah," she replied, her tone sharp with an undercurrent that mingled respect with a challenge. A spark of apprehension flickered in Sarah's chest, but she swallowed it down, leaning into the growing tension. "It's a learning experiment. Let us see how well our differing approaches can yield ingenuity." Collaboration unfolded before them, students merging ideas, the air thick with brainstorming and laughter. Lacey's sharp analysis collided with Sarah's empathetic guidance, creating a dynamic energy that excited the students. Nurtured by an underlying current of competition, both women pushed each other to refine their ideas, building upon strengths while exposing vulnerabilities. Yet, under the surface of this burgeoning teamwork existed unresolved tension. Lacey's criticisms, though often incisive, carried a sting that made Sarah second-guess her reflexes. The interplay wasn't purely based on academic principles, it dug into their motivations and fears. Why was Lacey so keen to lead, and what did her dominance hide? As the session drew to a close, Sarah found clarity. She noticed not only her growth but also the whispers of Lacey's potential strengths, hidden under layers of bravado. Perhaps turning this rivalry into a collaboration wasn't just an experiment, it could catalyze revelations about themselves. Later, as Sarah wrapped up the session, exhaustion mingled with exhilaration. Not only had she tested her abilities as a leader, but she had also come face to face with the possibility of an authentic alliance. Her heart raced at the thought of how much she had conquered this day, standing strong in an environment she once viewed as hostile. As students filed out, laughter still echoed in the classroom, but Sarah's gaze was fixed on Lacey, whose arms crossed tightly against her chest. "You did better than I expected," Lacey commented, tilting her head slightly toward Sarah before adding, "though I can still show you some techniques to refine your method." The duality of their interaction stirred Sarah's curiosity. There was depth in Lacey that needed unraveling. "Maybe we can learn from each other," Sarah replied, unveiling a boldness to bridge their rivalry into something novel. A silence hung, charged with potential. Would they step forward together, or would Lacey retreat into her defenses? With stakes rising, Sarah pondered her next move, a decision that could change everything, not just for her but for Lacey as well. The labyrinth of their relationship lay open before them. Would they navigate it with collaboration or retreat into division? The days that followed were a delicate dance, one that required balance and finesse. Sarah found herself replaying her last conversation with Lacey over and over, the words echoing in her mind. "Maybe we can learn from each other." The phrase rang with potential, but did they truly have the ability to shift their dynamic? The thought filled her with both hope and doubt. As the week progressed, Sarah structured her classes with an increasing emphasis on collaboration, an intentional move reflecting her determination to foster not only academic growth but also teamwork. Each day, Lacey was a fixture in the classroom, and rather than vie for dominance, they began to carve out a rhythm. They co-designed exercises that highlighted complementary skills, Sarah's empathetic approach married to Lacey's analytical rigor. Students thrived off the energy, but each success came tinged with a familiar uncertainty within Sarah. The underlying current between her and Lacey persisted, simmering like a pot on low heat. In team meetings and discussions, Sarah noticed that Lacey's critiques still struck a chord that stung, their competitive edge resurfacing during heated exchanges. It bothered Sarah, nudging at her insecurities. Why did Lacey's approval feel so necessary? Was it the reflection of her own self-doubt or something far deeper, a need to prove herself? During a particularly charged meeting around planning upcoming lessons, Lacey shot down an idea Sarah proposed. "It's too simplistic, we need to elevate the dialogue," she remarked, her tone cool and dismissive. Sarah bit back frustration. The old instinct kicked in a defensive posture that demanded she justify her thinking. Instead, she surprised herself with a calmness that felt foreign but grounding. "Can you elaborate on what you mean by elevate?" "Understanding your perspective might help me refine the idea further," Sarah offered, her voice steady, deflecting the urge to confront. Lacey paused, the slight arch of her brow relaxing. "Perhaps I was too quick to judge. What do you envision implementing?" The shift struck Sarah with an unexpected thrill. It felt as if they had shifted gears without crashing into one another. Lacey's walls, though still present, seemed to be wearing down. As they started to discuss Sarah's vision, ideas began to flow more freely, illustrating a complex synergy that neither had created alone. Yet, within this collaborative environment, a flicker of disquiet danced in Sarah's mind. She couldn't ignore the nagging realization that while Lacey might be opening up, cracks in her own self-confidence still lingered. Was she capable of standing tall beside a formidable figure like Lacey? Would she ever truly believe in herself against such a talented rival-turned-partner? At the end of the week, Sarah took time to reflect. Alone in her favorite coffee shop, she penned thoughts in her journal, wrestling with the confusion of her mixed emotions. With each word, she dissected various interactions, attempting to understand herself better. It became clear, she was outgrowing a need for validation from Lacey, searching instead for affirmation from within. Empowered by her insights, she made a decision: she would approach Lacey for a candid discussion about their developing partnership. It was time to confront the camaraderie with transparency, to define their collaboration authentically. She would not shy away from her feelings anymore. As she methodically wrote down her thoughts for what she hoped would be a constructive conversation, she realized the pressure of their relationship, both competitive and supportive, had initiated a crucial phase of her professional and personal development. What Lacey represented was not just a rival, she was a mirror reflecting both Sarah's strengths and frailties. With that understanding, Sarah prepared to step into this new territory, the intersection of collaboration and self-assertion. What lay ahead was uncertain, but the path beckoned. The following week offered an opportunity, a professional development workshop where they could receive feedback not only from peers but also from external experts. Would this setting provide a space for them to find a true partnership, or would it reignite their former combativeness? As Sarah pondered the possibilities, she felt a stirring in her gut, the kind of anticipation that signaled a turning point was near. The workshop began with an energy that crackled in the air, a mingling of nerves and excitement. Sarah walked into the brightly lit auditorium, her heart pounding. This was not just an opportunity to refine her teaching but also a moment to confront her fears about Lacey and herself. She noticed Lacey already at the front, engaged in conversation with other colleagues, her posture confident and self-assured. The disparity between their energies felt stark but illuminating. Throughout the morning, as speakers presented innovative teaching strategies, Sarah found herself in a mental tug-of-war. Every time she clapped for Lacey's contributions, she glimpsed the deep-rooted impulse to glean approval from her rather than honor the merit of her ideas. It was a dance between admiration and envy, with Sarah trying to align her own thoughts with an evolving perception of her worth. The next session focused on fostering collaborative environments in classrooms. Sarah's pulse quickened as she realized this was the crux of her own battle. The facilitator emphasized that healthy competition could bolster teamwork if paired with vulnerability. "Constructive criticism does not need to be harsh, it's about building each other up," he said, and those words reverberated within Sarah. Could she articulate her views to Lacey without the fear of crumbling under her sophisticated critiques? As the day unfolded, pairs were assigned to role-play scenarios based on real-life collaboration challenges. The assignment felt almost serendipitous when she discovered that she would be paired with Lacey. Confronting their dynamic in a controlled setting pushed Sarah into the deep end. She had to summon her earlier resolve, reminding herself that she wouldn't remain submerged in self-doubt. Their scenario revolved around academic feedback, a potential flashpoint for their ongoing tension. As they began, Lacey's incisive observations threatened to rattle Sarah, but digging into her mental resolve, she focused on how to articulate her responses rather than recoil. "I appreciate your insights, Lacey," she began, her voice firm yet inviting. "But I wonder how we could frame this feedback in a way that encourages your ideas while also valuing the unique perspectives our students bring." Lacey's brow furrowed momentarily, perhaps surprised at Sarah taking this path. It was a critical moment. The room around them faded as Sarah sought to pierce beyond their habitual roles. Lacey responded slowly, more thoughtfully than usual. "That's an interesting approach. Sometimes I forget that balance and feedback is crucial for us to thrive as a team." A small victory bloomed within Sarah. Had she just redirected a potentially contentious moment into one of mutual understanding? They worked through the scenario, the tension softening as they built on each other's ideas. Lacey finished the exercise with a nod of acknowledgement, a glimmer of respect sparking in her eyes. Standing amidst colleagues discussing their experiences post-workshop, Sarah realized she had passed through a threshold. She was buoyed not by Lacey's approval but by the affirmation she sought from herself. Her personal growth felt palpable. As they convened for the final reflections, Sarah locked eyes with Lacey, wondering if this newly forged understanding would withstand the test of time. Would they be able to carry this collaboration beyond the confines of an exercise into every facet of their professional relationship? Yet, beneath the surface of budding collegiality was a nagging uncertainty. Had they merely skirted around their past issues, or had they genuinely begun to rewrite the narrative of their partnership? With the workshop coming to a close, Sarah felt a shift, something defying simple analysis, lingering like a question left unanswered. Still, she was not yet satisfied. This encounter, this fragile respect, needed testing on her turf. Within her, a resolve swiftly formed. She would propose an upcoming collaborative project that demanded deep synergy. It was a chance to reaffirm their newfound rapport or reveal the fragility of their partnership. As she looked out at the bustling faces around her, she breathed deeply. The stage was set, but would she put her trust in a partnership or brace for potential conflict? The choice loomed, waiting to be made. As the days passed after the workshop, Sarah found herself in the thrall of an inner struggle. The exhilarating feeling of triumph she had experienced during her interaction with Lacey was starting to fade, replaced by a sense of impending expectation. Her plan to propose a collaborative project loomed over her like an unsteady tower. Each minute ticking away felt like a challenge to her courage and commitment. The school week unfolded like a stage warming up for a performance. Sarah meticulously organized her thoughts, reviewing previous success stories, convinced that the initiative would facilitate not only professional growth but also personal reconciliation with Lacey. She imagined lacing her proposal with enthusiasm, but excitement concocted a brew of self-doubt. Was she assuming too much about their newfound rapport? What if Lacey dismissed her suggestion outright? In her quieter moments, Sarah was engulfed by questions about her motivations. Was her determination rooted in a desire for genuine collaboration, or more so in an attempt to usurp Lacey's role? She had witnessed the way her colleague's ideas effortlessly drew admiration, and a part of Sarah wanted to shape her own identity, not defined by envy but by respect. This realization conjoined with her earlier victories, suggesting that her previous growth demanded attention but still tempted her down the darker paths of comparison. On Thursday afternoon, nerves coiled within her as she prepared to approach Lacey. Their encounter during the workshop lingered in Sarah's mind, a flicker of hope igniting the weight of anxious uncertainty. What if they had rewritten their narrative only to slip back into old habits? "Can I talk to you for a second?" Sarah's voice sounded steadier than she felt, driven by adrenaline as she caught Lacey in the faculty lounge. "Oh, sure." Lacey responded with a bright smile, as if genuinely interested. Sarah's pulse raced as she navigated through the initial pleasantries, trying to navigate the conversation toward the proposal. She initiated her thought, stumbling over words that felt significant yet ephemeral. Finally, she broached the project. "I thought we could create a joint curriculum unit that brings together our strengths, combining your unique insights with my approach to student feedback. I think it would produce something extraordinary." Lacey paused, her eyes narrowing slightly, as if assessing a strategic play. "You mean using a collaborative approach to teach students about peer feedback?" "Yes. Exactly that." Sarah's enthusiasm bloomed, but the words also nodded with a thin veil of hesitation. She framed her positioning carefully, hoping to exude confidence without elevating vulnerability to a weakness. Would Lacey see this as an opportunity or an imposition? Interesting, Lacey's tone wavered slightly, revealing a flicker of contemplation. I think there's potential in that. But we have to set clear guidelines, or absolutely. Sarah jumped in, stifling the urge to over-explain or defend herself. The intensity of their stakes felt palpable, and the unbroken eye contact they shared seemed to vibrate with tension. Here was a crossroads moment. Was she navigating the conversation as a true partner or as a challenger? In the back of her mind, nagging concerns lingered. Would this proposed project force them to confront the friction from their past or simply reinforce their roles? As Lacey nodded slowly, Sarah perceived a glimmer of collaboration. Perhaps they were on the right path. In the days that followed, Sarah found herself oscillating between anticipation and fear. Would their combined efforts reveal both growth and chemistry, or would Lacey quickly revert to familiar patterns? With their first planning session approaching, a twist of dread took root. The project could be a vessel of innovation or expose vulnerabilities she was not ready to confront. On the eve of their meeting, Sarah lay awake, her thoughts grappling with the complex labyrinth of possibilities. The risks involved in sharing her educational vision now intertwined with fears of vulnerability. It seemed destiny had carved a complex path. Would she navigate it with confidence, or would she tumble back into old habits of insecurity? Tomorrow would demand clarity and resolve, but the stakes felt monumental. The night dragged on, whispering the crucial inquiry: when standing at the intersection of collaboration and conflict, who would emerge stronger? Morning light spilled into Sarah's bedroom like a beckoning embrace, yet it found her in a restless state. Every shadow cast by the early sun hovered like her lingering doubts. As she lay there, the weight of expectation gripped her, a heavy cloak woven from ambition and anxiety. Today was the day she would meet Lacey to flesh out the collaborative project, and the reality of it tinged her excitement with unease. Breakfast became mere sustenance rather than a ritual as she mechanically prepared her toast, barely tasting it. Her mind whirled with the significance of what lay ahead. She needed clarity and focus but felt paralyzed by a cacophony of what-ifs. What if Lacey misinterpreted her enthusiasm as desperation? What if this collaboration fell apart, unraveling the fragile bond they had just begun to weave? Taking a deep breath, Sarah recalled the sentiments she had expressed during their last conversation. The vision she had crafted: the joint curriculum unit was not merely an exercise in teaching, it represented a shift in her own approach to professional relationships. Could it be that this project was less about control and more about fostering a connection? This realization became a guiding light, illuminating the pathway towards her growth. Arriving at school, Sarah's palms felt moist against the paper that contained her notes. She practiced her opening lines, rehearsing ways to assert her ideas without overshadowing Lacey. Yet deep within, apprehension nagged at her, an echo of her historical patterns of hesitation and anxiety. As she stepped into the meeting room, her breath hitched. Lacey was already there, seated with an air of relaxed confidence that both inspired and intimidated her. The subtle shifts in Lacey's demeanor felt like a reflection of Sarah's own internal struggle, a dance between comfort and discord. "Thanks for coming, Sarah," Lacey said warmly, extending her hand. The mere gesture was enough to settle some of Sarah's nerves, reminding her that they were partners in this venture, not competitors. "Of course. I think we're going to create something special together," Sarah replied, surprised by her own candor. She slid into a chair, the initial discomfort of the unknown giving way to a budding sense of possibility. They delved straight into planning, discussing objectives, strategies, and the challenges they might face. For the first time, Sarah felt herself actively listening. Lacey's insights were profound and thought-provoking, igniting a spark of creativity in Sarah that she hadn't known was dormant within her. This was not merely Lacey's strength, it was a partnership flourishing before her eyes. Time flew as they mapped out a structure for their joint unit. Sarah noted the way Lacey's face lit up at certain ideas, sharing that spark of enthusiasm that pulled Sarah deeper into the dialogue. It dawned on Sarah that her initial fears of inadequacy were misplaced. Instead of vying for comparative recognition, she was discovering her voice within a symbiotic exchange. Yet that epiphany was accompanied by a twinge of realization: would Lacey reciprocate this sense of collaboration if the project encountered rough waters? Her thoughts tunneled to past skirmishes, moments where misunderstandings had cast shadows over their interactions. As Sarah confidently proposed new angles and adjustments aiming for an equitable exchange, the fragility of their connection re-emerged in her mind. In their meeting's lull, a question loomed like an uninvited guest, begging for attention: how would they handle the disputes that were bound to arise as they ventured into this collaborative territory? As they concluded, Lacey's eyes sparkled with optimism. "I think we're onto something good here, Sarah," she said, their energy simmering with potential. Days stretched ahead filled with designing their curriculum, but the underlying tension remained. Each idea exchanged would be both an expansion of their professional landscapes and a confrontation with past issues. Unsure if she could withstand the push and pull of collaboration under fire, Sarah's resolve teetered on the brink. What would happen when the challenges arose? Would her newly founded confidence hold up under pressure, or would old fears resurface, threatening her burgeoning relationship with Lacey? As she packed up her things, a question bubbled within her: the time had come to face the music. Could their budding partnership withstand the trials ahead? The following week swelled with opportunities and tensions, each day presenting Sarah with a new layer of complexity in her collaboration with Lacey. Despite the excitement of crafting a new curriculum unit, the undercurrents of their interactions often frayed at her nerves. She found herself zoning out during meetings, distracted by the echoes of self-doubt that haunted her like specters. What if Lacey's voiced enthusiasm was simply surface level? What if, at the first sign of tension, the partnership would dissolve like sugar in water? The steady beat of her heart thrummed in her ears on the first day of implementation. Students poured into the classroom, eyes wide with curiosity. Sarah took a deep breath, glancing at Lacey, who was already setting up the materials for their first lesson. The classroom buzzed with youthful energy, but beneath it, Sarah struggled to contain her racing thoughts. Her confidence felt like a porcelain mask, beautiful but fragile and perilously close to shattering. As they began, Sarah's role shifted, more fluid than she had anticipated. Lacey naturally guided the discussion, encouraging students to share their thoughts, translating nervous energy into engagement. Sarah could see the students thriving, yet part of her felt disoriented. Her input, though valued, seems less clear-cut. She wrestled with her desire to interject while respecting Lacey's rhythm. Each moment of silence from her became a loud proclamation of her insecurities. After the lesson, Lacey turned to Sarah with a broad smile. "That went really well," she exclaimed, her enthusiasm infectious. But instead of basking in the success, Sarah felt the weight of her silence settle on her shoulders like a boulder. "Thanks," Sarah replied, forcing a smile. The gap between them loomed larger as she recognized that her reluctance to speak during the lesson was serving to widen it. Her mind raced through a series of internal dialogues. What was stopping her from asserting her ideas? The fear of being perceived as overbearing? Or perhaps the haunting memory of previous collaborations where her assertiveness had veered into dominance? But wasn't Lacey more inviting than anyone else she'd collaborated with? The question ran through her mind like a refrain: why does she still feel on the precipice of retreat? The next day, they reviewed the lesson. "I noticed you seemed a bit quiet," Lacey said gently, encouragement woven into her tone. Sarah hesitated, instinctively ready to offer up excuses. Instead, she willed herself to confront her truth. "I felt a bit overshadowed. I wasn't sure how to contribute without taking over." Lacey's expression softened. "I totally get that. But I think we need to lean into those exchanges more. Let us set aside time today to discuss what we can improve together." It was the nudge that sparked something in Sarah. A dawning realization washed over her: their partnership thrived on openness, and if she wanted it to flourish, she had to be vulnerable. As the day wore on, a quiet determination surged within her. Sarah initiated the conversation during lunch, laying bare her fears and her desire to elevate the partnership. She admitted, "I may not have strong convictions all the time, but that doesn't mean I don't have value to offer. I'd like to brainstorm ways where we can better balance our roles." Lacey listened intently, nodding along as they exchanged ideas. The dialogue shifted. It was no longer a singular direction but rather a journey they would traverse together. Each suggestion was a brick laid in the foundation of their partnership, solidifying a newfound trust. With each passing exchange, Sarah felt her fears begin to dissipate, replaced by an ember of resolve. Yet, as they flourished creatively, an unfamiliar tension lurked between them. The looming deadlines for course assessments nudged at their commitment, distorting the rhythm they had cultivated. A ripple of anxiety emerged. What would happen when their creative energies collided under the pressure of impending evaluations? As Sarah returned home that evening, her determination wrestled with a sense of foreboding. The road to robust collaboration was becoming clearer, yet she could not ignore the challenging terrain ahead. Would their partnership withstand the test of pressure, or would the inevitable criticism expose cracks that rendered it irreparable? Clarity began to fade as she weighed the price of vulnerability against the reality of conflict. The weeks leading up to the joint curriculum launch transformed into a whirlwind of creativity and nerves. Sarah had discovered not only a new purpose but also a collaborative partnership that was evolving before her eyes. She could feel the seeds of potential blooming not only in her professional life but in her personal growth as well. The first day of executing their joint curriculum arrived, a much-anticipated moment that floated on the edge of excitement and trepidation. Sarah's heart raced with anticipation and expectation as students filed into the classroom, eager for the fresh adventure. She and Lacey shared glances, each gauging the other's readiness for the journey ahead. With the lesson unfolding, Sarah witnessed something remarkable. Lacey's natural ability to engage students was amplifying the experience tenfold, and Sarah's confidence began to fuel her participation. As they transitioned into collaborative learning activities, Sarah found her voice echoing through the classroom. She posed questions, co-led discussions, and gradually let go of the self-imposed barriers that had previously muted her. After the initial rush of success, Sarah felt an empowering sense of realization wash over her. She was no longer drifting in the background but standing shoulder to shoulder with Lacey, equally contributing to the students' growth. She recognized in that moment that each victory, the vibrant discussions, the student engagement was a testament to their partnership, not a competition for recognition. In the days that followed, student feedback echoed joyously in her mind. Many commented that they experienced genuine excitement, a direct reflection of the environment Sarah and Lacey had cultivated together. As her confidence solidified, so too did her belief in her worth as an educator. Each constructive dialogue with Lacey became an opportunity, exposing layers of herself she had previously thought too fragile to share. However, just as they began to embrace their success, the looming deadlines of assessments began to cast a shadow over their collaboration. The pressure was palpable, manifesting in a range of emotions that threatened to interrupt the rhythm they had built. Sarah's heart constricted at the thought of reverting to old patterns of anxiety. Would the stress of evaluation unravel everything they had achieved together? The day of their first major assessment arrived, and tensions ran high. Sarah felt the weight of expectations, timing, grading, and presenting clear results to not only the students but their peers. She glanced at Lacey, who appeared unbothered and confidently orchestrating the final details. The juxtaposition unsettled Sarah, tightening the familiar knots of self-doubt in her stomach. As they prepared, the atmosphere felt charged with an unspoken challenge. Sarah, still reeling from internal anxieties, cleared her throat. "I just want to acknowledge that stress is high, and I hope we can find balance today," she offered, apprehensively. Lacey turned, momentarily caught off guard by Sarah's vulnerability. "Absolutely," she replied, her tone open and inviting. "Let's take a moment to breathe, recalibrate, and remind ourselves that we're in this together." Taking Lacey's lead, Sarah closed her eyes for a breath, channeling her previous lessons of embracing fear. She realized that acknowledging her discomfort didn't unveil weakness, instead, it fortified their bond. As the assessment day progressed, Sarah felt a shifting tide. The performance anxiety waned, replaced with a sense of unity forged through transparent communication. After the day concluded, Sarah felt a pent-up elation gnawing in her chest. The students responded positively, their reactions validated the effort they had poured into the curriculum. But even more rewarding was the collaborative triumph they had spun from the anticipation. With Lacey by her side, Sarah tackled challenges head-on, and the outcome proved that their partnership had not only survived but thrived. Reflecting later that night, a wave of self-satisfaction enveloped her. Sarah embraced the contrast between where she once stood restricted, insecure, and who she had transformed into assertive, confident, and deserving of recognition. More than the accolades or applause, she celebrated the journey she had undertaken to confront her fears. Lacey's words rang in her ears. "Let us celebrate this win." The simple acknowledgement felt significant. Sarah had achieved more than success in the classroom, she had conquered the self-doubt that had plagued her for years. The next day, Sarah walked the halls with renewed purpose. Her previously timid demeanor morphed into a solid confidence. Educating and collaborating with Lacey had shaped her not just as a teacher but as an individual ready to embrace her capabilities and shine in her authentic light. Ultimately, that validation was not solely about the outcome of assessments or student feedback. It was about recognizing her evolution, her transformation from uncertainty to assured competence. Sarah had found a legacy of her own, not overshadowed by her father's past or Lacey's charisma but illuminated by her steadfast persistence to break free from doubt. In this moment of clarity, she beamed internally, a sense of achievement and fulfillment intertwined to create a new foundation upon which she could build her future endeavors. Now, as Sarah stood at the threshold of new possibilities, she felt ready to leap into them wholeheartedly. She would seek out more collaborative projects, articulating her vision with confidence and assertiveness that she had come to own. And she knew, in her heart, that her journey had just begun. You need to subscribe now to this channel and not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep these transformative stories alive. Comment below your reactions and theories about Sarah's growth and share your own personal journeys. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this inspiring conclusion. Be a part of this amazing community of personal overcoming stories.